Hey everyone, Kwame here, hanging in my apocalyptic playground during this, I don't know, strangely apocalyptic time. I'm not under total quarantine as I'm an essential worker, but I'm spending a lot of time at home painting up my Death Guard army. So you can see right here, this is just one Plague Marine. I figured let's go through my process. I'll kind of show you what I'm doing. You get to see me messing around with chipping paint for like the first time. And hopefully I can give you some tips and pointers on just, you know, getting a good quality looking Plague Marine here. So yeah, let's just dive right into it. So I started off this paint, or this figure, using some Vallejo black primer. However, you can probably see that I didn't finish the entire thing with the Vallejo black primer. Instead, I realized I didn't necessarily have to use that, and I got a couple other Vallejo paints. I got this chipping medium set off of Amazon, and it comes with a bunch of different rust colors, which actually certainly worked for me. I mean, Citadel has some cool colors, but as far as like a good rust effect, Vallejo is definitely the way to go. So what I did was I hit it with the Vallejo surface primer. It's a German red-brown color. So I hit it with this, the entire thing, because this, I want this to be my base layer. Any kind of chipping effects that I pull off this figure, I want this particular color to kind of show through, so in all the corners of the figure you get like a really kind of cool rust look. So I'm just kind of covering the whole thing with this surface primer with this rust color. Alright, this part can get a little tricky here. So what I want is I just don't want all the surface rust, or you know, under rust, I guess you can call it, to be the same tone. That just doesn't really look realistic to me. So what I did was I took some of the Vallejo dark brown. If you have that rust chipping set, then it's the darkest like rust brown color in the set. And what I'm doing is I'm trying to hit a lot of the lower areas. I want my light to look like it's coming from the top of the character, or at least kind of give that that illusion once it's all set. So I'm hitting this whole model kind of from the bottom. So you can see that we're getting some shadows along the bottom, but also notice how I'm almost catching some of the raised areas. This is because rust typically, I mean, from my observations, rust gets a little lighter in color the closer to a recess it gets. So because I want that the surface area to look a little bit more worn and dinged up, I'm going to make some of the protruding areas a little darker. And this way, later on, once I go back to get all the little seams, I can hit it with a little bit of oxide paint from Citadel, and I can also use some lighter brown colors in there as well. Okay, so what I'm doing now is I'm trying to get a kind of a bleached look as far as the upper areas, the you know, top areas of the model here. And I'm kind of trying to do like a bleached metal, or bleached rust look. And I'm trying to get all these gradients in here so that when we apply the chipping paint, it doesn't just look like there's one solid color under it. I mean, for me, whenever making rust, it's all about the variation in rust colors. So for this surface rust, or for this lighter rust, I literally used light rust color from Vallejo, again, part of this chipping metal paint set. And you can see it actually comes out looking really cool. You'll notice even some of the areas that I covered in the darker browns are, you know, now getting covered up. It's fine, believe me. With rust, the more surface variation we have, the more interesting it looks. And again, people have other ways of doing this. This is simply my way, and I'm you know, pretty happy with the way it comes out. Again, you know, don't go crazy on trying to fill this up. It's all about restraint here. We're just looking for, you know, a quick blast out of the airbrush. That'll usually do the trick. It's so easy to go overboard on this. I've done it many times. So just use it sparingly. Okay, so now we have our undercoating set. All our rust's looking good. Time to start hitting it with color. So what I used here for this this kind of Death Guard green type of color is I used the Citadel Elysian Green layer paint, and I mixed it with some Flow Improver. It's the Vallejo Flow Improver, just so I can use it in the airbrush. And what I'm going to go do now is I'm going to hit all the areas, obviously, that I want to have or have had this green paint on it. Careful not, again, I can't stress enough, careful not to go overboard with the airbrush and just blast color into everything. You will regret it. It just becomes a pain to chip that stuff out. So what I'm doing is I'm just hitting the main surface areas, you know, the large plates by the leg, shoulders, and so on. I'm not trying to get this green paint into all the recesses. And I'm also not really going to hit any kind of, like, gooey areas. You know, this model doesn't really have, you know, a lot of the kind of gooey, rotted, nurgly, you know, effects that some of the other models have, which I think is why this was a good one to record. But you can see here that we're just very lightly hitting all the larger surface areas, so we can come back and hit it with this chipping medium. Okay, don't do this. Don't cover your model in ink before using chipping medium. This was definitely a mistake on my part, because what will happen is the chipping medium winds up bonding to the ink itself and just ends up pulling ink off. So, in retrospect, definitely do not put the ink down before you use your chipping medium, and you will see shortly exactly why. Now I'm going to hit my Plague Marine with the chipping medium that came in my set. And so I loaded it into my airbrush. It seems to run just fine without any kind of flow improver or anything like that. So what I did was take the chipping medium and I ran it along a lot of the edges and the surfaces that I plan on chipping. Don't go overboard with this, or you're going to be sitting there scrubbing it off all day. I learned this the hard way, to be perfectly honest, but I think we all do at some point. So I'm just hitting surface areas with this clear chipping medium, which now I'm going to let dry, and then I can come back and start chipping a little later. So right here is the prime example of why you don't put the ink on before the chipping medium. Because you can see what's happening is I'm not actually scraping off the green layer of paint, I'm scraping off the ink itself. And I mean, the chipping medium is doing its job, it's just I didn't layer it properly. So from here on out, after I go over the entire model, trying to figure out how to get the rust effect to show through, I actually just kind of wound up giving up on that and going in a different direction. Okay, so keeping it honest here, I gave up on the chipping medium after getting kind of a good effect along the character's knee and legs. I got some of the rust to show through, but ultimately I think it was my fault that I just didn't use it properly. I know better how to use it now. I've done quite a few more figures using this whole rust process, or chipping medium. So what I decided to do here was take the darkest rust and run it along all the edges. And what this gives the appearance of is like old weathered steel and iron. So I went with like this really dark brown matte color, part of the chipping medium set. And what that actually does is it makes it look like some of the paint is pulled away from the metal. It actually still gives the chipping effect, just using a very different process. But I mean, that's what this is all about. Sometimes you just have to figure out a different workflow to get the same effect. And this is what I decided to do. So I'm just going along all the edges, and anywhere I add this super dark matte brown, it's going to look like the paint is peeled away. So this is going to be the part where we take that dark brown color I just used and make it look more metallic. So this is a really neat little trick where you simply dry brush the silver color. I used like a gunmetal color, and where I just kind of dry brush it along the all the protruding areas because, of course, to get that like fresh combat look, having some of the shiny metal show through like it was just blown off the character tends to create a pretty cool look. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just going over all the brown areas with a very light layer of gunmetal. So. I decided to use a combination of the light rust color and an ochre yellow to paint the tubes. And this is just because I wanted to go for like kind of a good contrasting color, but something that was also kind of gross. And I figured dirty yellow always just kind of looks gross to me. And it seemed fitting for this Plague Marine. So I just started the edges of the tube off with a light rust color, you know, kind of a light brown, and then used the yellow to accentuate it on the areas kind of forwardmost on the figure, just to make it look like the recesses are, you know, gross and cruddy, and any kind of connections to the army or to the armor are just really, you know, disgusting. Works well for the blade ring. Okay, I know what you're thinking. The lights on his eyes suddenly popped on. I forgot to turn the camera on, my bad. But anyway, I'm getting down to the last maybe 10% of the model. But the last 10% usually requires about 90% of the effort of the entire project. So what I'm using right now is some OSL, or Object Source Lighting, in which case this is going to be his eyes. So what I did first was I laid down a layer of ink prior to doing this, red ink, and kind of covered the face, anywhere that the light is going to fall. And the key here is make sure you use ink and not paint. If you use paint, it's going to cover up your other paint, and then it just looks all washed out. What you actually want to do is just use the ink so it's transparent, and you can still see a lot of the, you know, paint effects, rust, and all that on the face. Now, I used some watered down white, about 50-50 mixture, so that it would drip into the corners of the eyes. I kind of wanted like a rim lighting with these eyes, rather than like a centrally focused bulb lighting. So that's what I used with this. I'm pretty happy with the way it came out. So I've realized over the years of painting, figure painting, just being an artist in general, 90% of the look is going to come down to the last 10% of the image, or of the project, or I should say 90% of the work is coming down to the last 10% of the figure, and that's really where it can get a little discouraging. It's easy to start a figure off, to get all your base coats, it starts to look really cool, but every figure hits that kind of awkward stage of, wait, where do I want to go with this? That's when you hit, you know, the last 10% of the job, and then, you know, the maximum effort, that 90% effort right there. So a lot of this, what I'm doing right now, is going through and getting a lot of the final details. Little bits of chipping paint, little metallic bits, all the little details that usually the eye completely misses. The way I see it, if you're doing your job right, a lot of the work you put in kind of goes unnoticed. The figure looks right, it looks correct, but to the average viewer, they're not sure why. Now, obviously, if I screwed up here and did something completely out of place, that would be front and center. But if I do this right, the whole model kind of comes together. So don't focus too much attention to one tiny piece. Keep looking at it as an overall design. Don't get tunnel vision, which I've done many times. So right here, we're getting into my favorite part of the paint, which is the gooey stuff. I love painting the gooey stuff. So what I'm doing right here is I'm just starting off with a base layer. I'm just going to use a pink. I think that's a pretty good medium color, not too dark, not too light. I went ahead and mixed the pink paint with a bit of Lemaine medium. I just used like a couple drops, just enough to get it a bit thinner so it goes into all the recesses. I'm not too super concerned with all the areas that are protruding because I'm going to dry brush those a bit. So I'm just trying to get a basic pink layer over everything. So next what I did was took some magenta, I thinned it down real good with Lemaine medium, and I started putting it in all the recesses to kind of act as the shadow component to this, the darker areas of like these fleshy things coming out of the marine. And, you know, I gave it a pretty healthy coat, just so all the recessed areas are filled. Use it almost as an ink. The only reason I'm not using an ink here is because I do want it to really cover the surface. I don't want to see too much under the paint. I'd rather kind of mix together with the pink, with that medium I did. Now that I have my dark and lights, my darks and lights, I'm going to go ahead and put in some of the crimson ink. That should really help add contrast to it, make it look really, you know, kind of slimy and gross. Okay, so now we're really down to the last like 5% of the model. All of this is the tiny details. I used a couple different shades of ink, including Agrax Earthshade and I think the Seraphim Sepia, to go in and just kind of catch the edges of a lot of the hard surface areas, the grenades on the back, some of the tubes that I already painted yellow. Now I'm going to go back with a little Agrax Earthshade. So all the tubes. So you can see like all those little rings in the tubes. It really helps bring them out. Well, this is really getting down to the last of it right here. I'm just going across and across the whole model and adding a little bit of edge wear along all the metal surfaces with just a little bit of gunmetal. On some of the surfaces, I use a little bit of like the brighter plate metal color. Either way, this is just going to add a little bit of a shimmer when you're, you know, shooting it. And you know, showcasing it when bright lights are on it. It looks really cool to just have that tiny little shimmer. Now, don't go overboard on this. Stay reserved with it. You know, use sparingly. But I'm just going to cover all these little metallic areas with this little shine. And with that, that is pretty much this full tutorial. I really hope all of you enjoyed watching this. I hope you can learn something. And you know, there hopefully will be more of these. I know it takes me a little while to get them out, but, you know, I'm painting, recording, editing, doing all this myself, so it does take a little time. But, yeah, if you have any questions, hit me up in the comments, and thank you very much for watching.